Today on the podcast, I'm joined by Ed Arnold, the editor-in-chief at the San Antonio Business Journal. Ed, thanks for being here. Good to meet you.
Oh, no, nice to meet you too. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. I love talking to people in local media and learning all these
Sure.
stories.
Yeah.
So with that, I'd love if you could just tell me about your story, just your kind of
Sure.
background and your story in local media and media in general, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think I have a little bit of a unique story. I'm sure there's a lot of other folks that have winding paths to journalism, but I it's my second career. Journalism is my second career. I managed and partially owned a small audio video store for about a decade before I became a journalist. The kind of back in the days when flat panel TVs cost like 12 grand. I had a little shop in Memphis that sold those, and I loved it. We had a wonderful time. But around 2007, 2008, when the housing market collapsed, it was pretty clear that my business was going to go with it. People were no longer going to be dropping $11,000 on a plasma TV. So bless my wonderful wife, who basically said, "Well, what is it that you want to do now?" Right? Because my options were right. I could go be like a regional manager for Best Buy or something, or I could try to start another business on my own, which is not a bad idea. But the only job I ever wanted as a kid, when you got the what do you want to be when you grow up, right? The only job I ever wanted when I was a kid was to be a reporter. I'm not quite sure how that got into my brain, but from the time I was around 9 or 10, the idea of being, a dashing correspondent was pretty exciting to me. I never got there, but she said to me, "Why don't you go pursue that then?" And she gave me the space. I was very lucky because I shut my business down and I went back to college. And I went to journalism school at the University of Memphis. And again, I feel like I really threaded the needle here. I graduated on a Friday in May, and I started at what I like to call as the world's oldest intern at the Memphis Business Journal the following Monday. And that
Wow.
was 14 years ago. And I've been with American City Business Journals ever since. So I have a kind of a unique path, right? Because I don't have the kind of broad experience that a lot of your guests do, where they've seen lots of different corners of the media world. I'm really cooked in the sauce of this of American City Business Journals. And quite frankly, I don't think that any other large newspaper chain, Gannett or Hearst or any of the other ones that we all know, would have ever put me in this position, because I joke about this a lot, but I always say that I may be the least accomplished journalist to be an editor in chief in the American City Business Journals overall, because quite honestly, I think what I did best and what they were able to see in me was that I had good management skills, that I knew how to manage people, that I had a good savvy for making groups work together. And that's the reason, rather than like my ability to break stories and win awards, that brought me to this place. And so I've always been, since I was a kid, a news junkie. My family were, piles of newspapers were always part of the subscriptions, and magazines are always just part of what was in the background of the house all the time. And so it felt like where I wanted to go. It just seemed like an incredibly unlikely scenario for me to be able to pull off. So I feel very lucky to get as far as.
Sounds like a really
Sure.
cool culture that you guys have
Yeah.
going on there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty unique. And part of what I like about American City Business Journals is that we're very small locally. So all 45 of us all over the place, but the newsrooms are rarely larger than 9 to 12, maybe 15 people total. And we're encouraged by the corporate office and our family that owns us, the Shaws that still own us, or at least own half of us. The other half is owned by Advance. And so the Shaws are very clear. If there's something that you want to do as the local editor or the local publisher or local reporters, we want you to do it. If it makes you more connected to the city that you're in, we want you to pursue that. And we're sort of given the leeway to do the kind of things that make us more ingrained to the cities that we're operating in necessarily than the corporate structure that we are above. Obviously, every corporate structure's got things you got to be in line with and all that good stuff. But really making sure that you reflect the community you're working in is a priority above a lot of those things. So we get to have this sort of little local newsroom, but if I need help, I have a giant corporate structure that I can call upon. And so I feel like I feel very lucky in that way, that we kind of are navigating this new terrain in sort of an old school and new school way, and I think it's very gratifying. It's a business model and a corporation I feel comfortable with. And that's always a struggle in our business.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's really interesting to hear. And yeah, I'd like to dig into some of that in a minute, but I was wondering if we could go back for a sec. Can you tell me just a little bit about the San Antonio Business Journal, and
Oh
kind
yeah.
of your day to day for listeners out
Sure,
there? Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, like we're a weekly paper. So Wednesday, and in fact, right before this interview, I shipped the weekly edition. We got it out the door right before we got finished here. But truthfully, it's a daily situation. Every news organization at this point is a daily print or a weekly or whatever. We're all writing every day on the internet at this point. And so a lot of what is the day in and day out is about cranking through all of that. So 5 staff writers, 2 editors that are doing day-to-day work, and then me and our staff photographer. It's each one of those reporters, I expect to read at least 2 stories a day from them. And so we're, cranking 10 to 12 stories a day. Some newsrooms will do a lot more, but that's about what we're doing every day. And then it's about sort of planning a little bit further ahead, right? We try to say, on Monday, for example, I have everyone come into the office, God forbid, and just try to get everyone on the same page, because it's I don't know how to explain it, but when you have a group this small, it's really important that they work together and work really well together, at least in my opinion. We don't have a newsroom capacity to hide someone who's not a team player. You get a newsroom of
Right.
50 reporters. You can hide some very talented but hard to work with people in the corner, right? This guy's really a good writer, but boy, he does not play well with the rest of the staff. We
Right.
don't really have that as an option here. If you can't get along with the rest of the staff, you got to go somewhere else. So a lot of what happens on a day to day is cranking through those daily stories. We pay a lot of attention to the 2 email alerts that we send out every day, and we're really focused on those. I try to think of them as if they're daily editions to some degree, as if we're putting out a daily, but it really is about making sure that we're filled every day, and then that content back feeds into the weekly based upon what we think is the best work over that period of time. So it's it's so funny because it's different, than other newspapers, but there's so much continuity in the way that we do things the same, right? Like,
Right.
no one really thinks of themselves if they're putting out a weekly. If you're an alt weekly, for example, putting out a weekly paper, or community weekly, you're writing every day. The stories are online every day. So we all now have sort of adopted what the old daily newspapers vibes were during the day. And so a lot of it is, for me, at the editor in chief role also, is I have 2 incredibly talented managing editor and assistant managing editor, and they're really those 2 women really run the newsroom day in and day out. I'm there to both be a conduit for the rest of the community, to be, connect them with the rest of the business community, and to be sort of the intermediary, if you will, to some degree. And so I'm often stuck at a chamber luncheon eating rubber chicken, right? I'm out trying to meet some new folks or press the flesh with some CEOs to get them into the tent, as I like to call it, as sources for the rest of the reporters. And I think a lot of my role as editor is about smoothing that runway for the reporters, if that makes sense, where
Right.
I'll go out, meet the new bank CEO that gets appointed, right? We write a little press release story, and then I'll try to go meet him so that I can smooth that path for the finance reporter to get in touch and build a source relationship. And then finally, it's about making sure that we are in the right place. So your listeners may or might know, but everything we do is a paywall thing. We have nothing it's rare, but we have almost nothing that's out from behind the. And so the way I look at it is, there are some wonderful news organizations here in San Antonio. We have a nonprofit newsroom that's working very hard. Obviously, multiple TV stations that do very good work. Texas Public Radio is based here, and they're excellent, excellent news source. All of them give their coverage away for free, or advertising based, right? Nothing that I do is given away for free. So it's also about reminding the reporters and pushing them to do something that they can't find anywhere else. Because if I'm asking you to pay every year, and you can go get what I'm giving you for free somewhere else, then I've really hosed you as a customer, right? And so it's true, right? If you can get
Yeah.
for free something I'm trying to sell you, then I've kind of messed up the point, right? So pushing the reporters to look in places other people aren't looking, or at least angles that the other publications are not looking. That's a lot of what I'm doing on a regular basis, is trying to push them to go, that's great. That development, everyone in town wrote up that. It's very interesting. It's not that it isn't newsworthy, but you got to go find a different angle. Maybe we can talk to, stage 3 of this somehow. Maybe we can talk about things around it in some ways. There used to be an old American City Business Journal story that said, if the president gets assassinated in your town, that is not your story. Your story is to cover the funeral home that the body ends up at. And I mean, it sounds a little silly, but it's also very logical, right? Like, if I'm trying to serve up something to you and you can just go get it for free well done at another news organization in town, I haven't proven that that money's worth it, right? And that's a lot of what we're trying to do. And that means everything takes longer, right? If you're writing things you can't find anywhere else, takes longer. It's harder to get out of the hole. It's harder to pull the fish out of the lake, as you might say. It just takes more time and more resources to do. But that's the level that we kind of have to be at if we're going to continue to ask folks. This is another way of thinking about it, right? I did a panel years ago with a wonderful news director from Univision, which is a huge outlet here in San Antonio, as we have so much of our population is bilingual, and folks from TPR, wonderful reporter Joey Palacios, who was there, and then the editor-in-chief of the local nonprofit news organization, the San Antonio Report. And I was on a panel with them. And I said to him, look, everyone on this panel gives you, except me, gives you their content for free. And these are people you must support for functioning democracy. For this community to work properly, you need to support these people. I'm a luxury item. I'm asking you to pay on top of that. So if that's what I'm asking you to do, we have to act like that. We have to look for things that are beyond what are, and I don't even want to say that we're competitors to them, because there's tons and tons of things that I write that they would never bother with, right? But the other news organizations in town, I've got to make sure that the reporters are looking, where they're not. And that's just daily diligence, right? Looking over what everyone else is doing, trying to position and point reporters in the direction that we want them to go in. So that's a lot about, the philosophy of what I'm doing on a day in and day out basis is about trying to keep those priorities in mind.
Man, I love the way you said that. Like, it's behind a paywall, and it's almost being pretty honest with your audience.
Yeah.
We were talking about podcast before I hit record. Do you know the Acquired podcast? You aware of that one?
Yes.
Yeah. They just put this is really fresh. I was just listening to it. They just put one out this week on Trader Joe's is the company they looked at.
Yeah.
And their whole thing, it's kind of similar. It kind of rhymes with what you were saying. Is
Yeah.
They don't collect data on their customers, and they don't have membership programs, and they don't do any sales because they're like, no, we're not going to insult our customers like that. We're going to be straight and to the point.
Yeah.
I don't know. There might be something in there.
There's always, I think I know exactly what you're talking about, which is like, how many times are you asked to shove your phone number into a pen pad every time you shop? And people don't realize, we in media probably realize more than most, but a lot of that is just to sell your information so that there's another profit center for whatever organization that you're in. They believe that they can market to you better. They believe that they can, and honestly, there's a serious fatigue with that going on in the consumer world, where it's just like, how many different ways are you trying to make money off of me for buying this pasta at 2 p.m, right? Like it doesn't feel like and this is, this is across the spectrum. It doesn't feel like we're being honest with customers the way I kind of feel like we should be. And so when you find an organization like Trader Joe's or Costco is another good example, where it's like, you pay this membership fee and that's gets you here, right? Like, like that's what it is. We're, it's almost refreshing. Right? Because you're like, oh my God, no one asked for my social security number and home address and everything else.
Yeah.
Like, no one tried to sell me a branded credit card. What's wrong with this retailer? It really does feel like you have a more healthy relationship with that business. And I would like us to be that kind of forward with the customers, because readers are customers, right? Like, we're editorial. Advertisers are not customers, right? Those are the salespeople's customers. They're not my customers. The customers for us are readers. And so we have a very clear, if you pay, I promise you, I'm going to give you more things here that are exclusive or harder to find than you will somewhere else. And if I don't live up to that, I get it. You should stop subscribing. Don't stop subscribing. But that's the idea. That's it's. I want it to be clear, and I want customers to feel like, I want the readers to feel like they're getting what.
Yeah, man, that's great. Well said. You're like a clip machine. I'm gonna have a bunch of good stuff coming out of this. I can tell. So you did talk about. I like the way you framed the customers. The readers are your customers. And you're also talking about. Well, we've been talking about how a lot of it's behind a paywall. Is that? I'm not entirely sure how American City Business Journals work. Is that the only revenue driver? Are there like event? Is there anything else
mixed in?
There's
a bunch of stuff. Yeah, we do events, and events have become a bigger part of our business over the years. And there's some classic signature ones that just do really well for us year over year, right? We do a 40 under 40. We do a best places to work. You've seen these things before, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And that's become a solid revenue driver for us. We do quite well with that. I do think that the organizations that we're in competition with for those kinds of things, which are generally like chambers, civic organizations, there is something about having the brand of a newspaper or the brand of a news outlet a part of those that allows us to make it clear that we're trying to hold things to a higher standard, right? Like you cannot buy your way into my,
Right.
like, whereas a chamber, and I'm not even mad at them for this, but if you give them enough money, they're going to get you a plaque.
Yeah.
And again, like I said, I don't blame them for that. That's part of the job, you know?
Right.
But because of that, I think that our events and our award events, we've been trying to do more news focused events where I lead a panel or we do some more, you know, news focused things over the last couple of years, particularly around trade with our proximity to Mexico and tariff issues breaking out. We felt like that was the perfect kind of subject for us to do in a live presentation, right? Where we can get stakeholders in a room and get some discussion going. And I don't think anyone else, I don't think anyone except a news organization is properly positioned to do that kind of thing. So revenue, I mean, no question, the events make money for us and have become a larger part of our revenue. Oddly enough, and people tend not to believe this when I tell them, but the print edition still is a profit driver for us. We still make money on the print edition. One day, and I'm sure someone at our corporate office knows when that day may be, we will no longer have a profitable print edition. But as long as we have one, that's still a big part of what we do. Subscription revenue, I think it's probably been 6 or 7 years since ACBJ fully committed to a paywall. Before that, and this is a very odd thing, but each editor had basically carte blanche to decide what was and wasn't behind a paywall, which I don't think any other organization had such a thing.
Yeah.
Because it was just and so the idea was, oh, you just wrote something off a press release. Don't lock that up, right? Let that out free.
Right. I see. Yeah.
You see what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
but that led to too many things not being locked up, right? That led to
Gotcha.
too much. You know what? I'm not sure if this one's really worth it. And then it's like, you know what, man? They should all be worth it. Like, if that's the problem, we're writing the wrong stories. Just lock the damn thing up and take it from there. And since then, revenue from readership has been growing. And so advertising revenue, particularly on the print side, digital has been going just fine. But obviously, you know, your listeners and folks know around, digital is not making up the gap that print used to make. Like, digital's not making up enough, especially for, you know, local newspapers. We're just not a big enough audience to make money off of digital ads at the level that a national would make. So we're definitely improving in that. But one of the things I like is the readers themselves, the subscription revenue is becoming a bigger and more important part of the revenue chain. It's still, every ACBJ paper is different. We all have our own little budgets and revenue. So I don't think that it's risen above in the mid 20s or so. About a fourth is now coming from subscriber revenue. But honestly, that's what I want to see. If that number keeps growing, I feel like it actually leads to a healthier paper overall, right? Because who is paying to keep the lights on? Again, if it's the readers, then your first allegiance will be to that customer, right? If it's advertisers, then even if editorial doesn't listen to them or ever know them, the entity itself is much more focused on trying to appease those people. So advertisers is always going to be important. There's no way that they won't be. But I find that as we grow the reader, the subscriber revenue, the how do I phrase this? The sense of what's important to us gets clearer.
Right. All right, great. Man, that's man. I love your attitude. It's like, yeah, well, every story should be worth it. I love that. I love that.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. I know some of them aren't. But like, that needs to be the mentality, right? Like, ask a reporter, like, will you buy this? Would you buy this? Like,
right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, is this
Seems
a thing
straightforward.
Would you, you know, and if they can say yes without any reservation, that tells you something about what they think about their work. That's the way I see it.
Awesome. Great stuff. So I've been very curious about this one. I haven't really got to ask this question, but so you were at the same organization, kind of how you laid it out before. You were at Memphis Business Journal for years and then moved to San Antonio. So I'm just curious if you can talk to anybody about the differences you've seen, because, you know, you're also the business communities in these cities. Just the differences or things that have stood out to you making that transition in the business communities of two very different cities. And like, yeah, I'd love to hear about that.
For sure. Yeah. And it's interesting that Memphis is a town I have just deep affection for to this day, and I love that place very much. Many, many, many friends and wonderful memories there. It's a city that's been population wise flat to declining maybe 30 years now. Maybe 30 years, either dead steady or a little dip, right? For about 30 years now. There's some regional suburbs and such that are growing. Parts of North Mississippi are growing, et cetera, et cetera. But it's also a town it's one of the poorest cities in America. And it has only a handful of very, very large corporate players, which FedEx is obviously number one and gigantic. If you mail a FedEx package, it goes through Memphis no matter where the hell you're sending it, right?
Yeah.
Now, FedEx is incredible and does a fine job and has, tens of thousands of employees in the city, but it isn't enough to really turn that city into the growth push that say Nashville, for example, has seen. And don't get me started on that. But San Antonio in its own way is dissimilar in that people are pouring into San Antonio, like just constant growth. Now we get overshadowed by Austin because it's only 60 miles away, and that's one of the most booming cities it's been in the last 30 years. So it's easy to get overshadowed. But during 2020, we passed Austin for a number of people moving to town. In fact, we have grown in the 8 years that I've been here. We've added, I think, I'm trying to remember if it's 50 or 60,000 people or, some very, very impressive growth numbers. And that just changes the dynamic of the business community instantly, right? It's unfair to say that Memphis is stagnant because it is changing a lot and there's lots and lots of activity that's happening there and lots of good stuff to cover that we enjoyed a lot. But there's some persistent, never-ending challenges that come along with having a market that isn't growing in population. And so the business dynamics of the two places, very, very different, very, very different. Now, what's interestingly similar about them is their sort of perspective of themselves. And that's what I think is funny. So San Antonio, a lot of times when I got here, it was always so surprising. People would be like, well, we're not as big as Houston or Dallas, and we're not as rich as Austin. They would be like, yeah. Well, we're fourth. And I'm like, guys, I know that it feels right to you to say that. But if you take this city and put it in 41 of the other 50 states, it would instantly be the biggest, richest city in that place. And I don't think people get that because, again, 60 miles up the road is Austin with its, awe-inspiring growth. And then Houston and Dallas, which are two of the 10 biggest cities in America. It's you end up sort of feeling small by comparison, even though that we're not. Another thing about both cities that I think is fascinating is they're both, and I hate using the term minority majority because I think it means nothing, but this is a Hispanic American community here in San Antonio, and Memphis was an African American community in Tennessee. And those two things create a tension that is really interesting and valuable. And I think helps sort of create a culture within both cities that both of them can sniff out inauthenticity really quickly. If you're not a part of the community, if you don't know where you are, if you don't take the time to learn where you are, you're seen as out of step and sort of written off awful quick. And I think part of that is that the communities here, the Hispanic and African American communities, very different in, no shortage of ways, but meaning that there's an ownership of the community where you need to learn the history of this place in order to be good at being a reporter here. You can't just airdrop in and 4 months from now, be a great reporter because you do not know the culture yet. It's going to take you some time. And I feel like both of the cities are like that in that way. I sure do wish folks would really see how great Memphis is and start moving there in large numbers because I do really think it's a wonderful town with wonderful assets and people. But until that happens, they're always going to be struggling and the business community is always going to be a little bit behind its neighbors because you just don't have think of it this way, right? The city council here in San Antonio can pass ever increasing budgets because there are more people moving to pay into the tax rolls. Memphis does not have that luxury. You're doing the budget every year with a declining population. Your choices are what thing do people not like or not need that much that we can cut? And which is just a much, much different and more difficult place to be. And so that cascades into the business community in the same way. If you see your city investing big in infrastructure, if you see your city passing billion-dollar bonds and spending it, the business community is going to be able to flow from that as well.
Yeah.
When your city is forced to make really, really tough economic decisions, it is harder and harder and harder to get that.
Interesting. Lots of good stuff in there. Yeah. I've never been to Memphis, but or even like Tennessee, that region really, but I've always been kind of drawn to it. I'm from the Mountain West. It just, to me, it's just it's almost like a foreign place. It looks drawn to the South sometimes, especially in the winter months.
Look, my man, like I'm from North Georgia. I've lived in Mississippi, Tennessee, and Texas. You don't get much more Southern than me. My family's from Alabama. It's like, you don't get a whole lot more Southern than I am. I will tell you, and this is a thing that I like to say about the people in Memphis is Memphis, I mean, literally its homegrown culture changed the world's musical taste, right? Like it's underappreciated, but like that town has 1 million or less people in the metro, not in the city, in the metro,
Wow.
1 million or less people. And it's still a community that cranks out musical artists constantly. It's still happening. I mean, sadly, rest in peace, Young Dolph, but like there are like constantly rappers and still coming out of that city today. And there's still musicians coming up constantly, despite the fact that it is a very small city by comparison of a lot of, so it really punches above its weight, and I think it deserves credit for it. So come on down, man. I'll show you the river. It'll be great.
Yeah. I now want to. It's starting to get cold here. I don't want to be around the cold, but
I was so excited to put this sweater on. It's going to be 70 in like an hour. It's ridiculous. I get so excited to put a sweater on for no reason.
It's the one nice thing. I get excited. I can wear my jeans and flannels again this time of year.
There it is.
And I also just wanted to comment on like how you said the differences in the growth of the cities. I spent most of my life in Denver.
Oh yeah.
So about 5 years ago,
Giant
which is maybe
in Denver.
maybe not on the order of Austin, but not far behind it.
Not far. No, that's right.
Just living through it. That's why I live on the western slope of Colorado now. I could start a whole separate podcast on my feelings on the traffic in Denver. That's literally why I left. The road system did not keep up.
No,
but just being in a city with that kind of growth. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, but I mean, that's a really good point. I mean, I'm often talking about this because Austin and San Antonio are growing together, right? Like there's, again, it's 60 miles on a single highway. Like all of those communities are filling in with giant numbers, right?
Yeah.
Eventually, and by eventually, I mean like 15 years, the two cities are essentially going to grow together. Now, it's still 60 miles. It's not going to be an easy jaunt from downtown to downtown, but it's going to become less and less. We have to be working more and more together. It's going to be less separated. There's going to be less undeveloped land between here and there by a long shot. And one of the things that could completely derail that growth is transportation. If we can't figure out how to stay ahead and people just feel locked in, they're going to get out of town. They're going to move somewhere else. If it's already hurting Austin. Luckily for them that they've done some decent, as best they can, investment in public transit. San Antonio needs to get there. We have a wide city where the distance between north and south is huge, 30 miles or whatever. But that's exactly what could derail all of this, is just not keeping up with the infrastructure demand. So it doesn't surprise me that Denver's chased some folks out. It's such a beautiful city. It has so many great things to it, right? Like one of my favorite places to visit is Denver, and one of my favorite places for Texans to visit is Denver. I'll come rolling up there in July.
I'm in Montrose. We're about an hour from Telluride.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Hour and a half from Aspen. In July, the plates on the street were just Texas, 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 Texas. Because apparently our 95 degrees in the dry heat is cool to
it's totally fine, man. It's totally fine. I was in Denver a couple of years ago, and a guy was like, I was like, yeah, we're up here visiting from Texas. And he was like, oh, sorry that the heat came with you. I was like, this is not heat, brother.
Yeah.
Like, this is fine. I'm loving this. I'm putting on a coat.
That's funny. All right. I got off the rails there.
Ah, it's all good, man.
So my obligatory AI question, I feel like it has to come up in every episode.
For sure.
I'm curious your thoughts on, it's a big question. AI can mean a lot of different things.
Absolutely.
Curious your overall thoughts and like if you're using any tools in your workflows with your team or how that's impacting your org.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, it's an interesting thing to discuss, right? Because if I catch a reporter writing stories with AI, that's probably their last day with me.
Yeah.
Right. However, we as a corporation have invested in using AI for things like SEO headlines or teases or social teases, things that, quite frankly, a lot of editors, including myself, are not the best at. Right. Like, honest to God, like it's been years since I've been refreshed on how to write SEO properly. Right. And truthfully, Google moves those goalposts constantly. So I don't even want to keep up with it. to be honest. So to have AI do that for us is ideal as far as I'm concerned. I do think that at a certain point we should have an AP style AI bot that just checks our AP style and speeds up copy editing. Can't speed up thought process. It can't speed up the thing that we were talking about before, getting me exclusive and hard to find stuff. Like, it can't break that barrier. I often say that, like, AI can't meet people and learn secrets. It just won't. It's just not how. But what it can do is dig into data for us and pull out nuggets as we want them. It can collate stuff twice as fast as it used to. I don't know the last time any of your listeners listened to, or watched All the President's Men, but there's a scene in the early part of that where they're just digging through phone books for like 6 days.
Right.
Right. They're just literally like, they're going to every library and just going through, like, they're flying to a library in Florida to look through phone books. Right. So we've already accelerated a ton of what was good shoe leather journalism just by having the internet, just having searchable archives. But I'm not going to say that I'm an AI skeptic, because I use it. I absolutely use it. And I think it is a valuable tool. I absolutely believe that we're in the overhype era of what this thing is. I absolutely believe that some of it's going to crater. I'll give you a really good example. Last year, we did an issue that we called Power Players. And it's just a nice featurette where we picked like 100 people to know in San Antonio, in South Texas, border communities in Laredo and McAllen. And we really wanted to, like, if you were coming to town and you wanted to know who the real movers and shakers in this region are, who are they, right? So we made this list, and we, as you make a list in a newsroom, we're just on a whiteboard yelling at each other and trying to scribble things on the wall, right? And so we get a nice sheet going, a Word document that's just got everyone's suggestion, and we hash it out and yell at each other for a couple days about it. And then we have our list, and I'm thinking, all right, well, you know what? If I could just get AI to alphabetize this by last name, right? Because everything is written, Mark Smith and Henry Cisneros and all these other.
Right.
And I'm like, if I could just get this thing to do, like, all right, alphabetize this by the last name. And I tried 9 times, and it never got it right. It never got it right. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm sure that these models will improve, right? I'm sure that over time an issue like that will be resolved. But that's what I mean about, let's be honest, tech companies for 25 years have been selling us half-baked ass products that don't really live up to their potential for a decade after they launched them. Think about how poor Google was in the earliest days of, right? Like, and now it's becoming crummy again.
It is.
It's becoming crappy. I suggest everyone read Cory Doctorow's new book about how tech companies are intentionally getting worse to make more money over the years.
Huh. I'm gonna have to look at that. Yeah.
And I hope this is not, I'm gonna have to beat me, but the title of the book is In Shitification.
I've heard that term. I'm gonna look into that.
It's a wonderful book, and Cory Doctorow is a great thinker about technology. And so that's where I think we are. I think we're in a tool that can be really helpful for some menial tasks that grind away at you, right? I got a giant pile of data from the state. I'm gonna feed it into AI, and we're gonna ask it questions and see what we can get out of it. But frankly, it doesn't prevent the need to fact check it, because it will screw up. And that's where I'm at, is that, yes, this thing can be really valuable. I love having it write an SEO headline. I love having it write a tease for me when I can't come up with a good one, right? Sometimes on a story, I'll need to write like 3 teases, right? Like for various spots where it's going to go. Brother, I'm not the best at that. So I'm really happy to have, AI's assistance with that. But the kind of journalism that AI can crush, right, that can really damage, is not the kind of journalism that we're doing. It's, it requires meeting people and spending time with folks. The joke in the newsroom is we want to learn all your secrets and tell all our friends. And AI is not going to learn your secrets, right? It's you have to know someone for that. So it's a important and new world that we're going to live in with this thing. I'm such a traditionalist that my eyebrow is just all the way up constantly when I'm dealing with them, because I have just been overhyped so hard by tech companies over the last 30 years that it's hard for me to take it as like, well, this thing that we launched 30 months ago is going to change the world. And I'm like, maybe, but at this point you have a 30-month-old product. That's what you've got, right? Like, so
yeah.
I'm a little bit of a naysayer, but I wouldn't say altogether. I just mean that as I want people to like, be very cautious with it. I have heard from multiple business owners telling me that folks in their office reliant or using it, like kind of co-piloting their emails or co-piloting their, their marketing materials, has actually made their workplace significantly less efficient, because it's just the same way that social media is now just loaded with slop, right?
Yeah.
So too are people's work communications becoming loaded with slop, like things you can tell this person did not write. I've gotten emails from someone for 20 years and they never spelled never spelled well. And now suddenly pristine language that would never come out of their mouth is now, coming through their email.
Yeah.
So that's, I'm dubious about it as a panacea for all things, but absolutely it's going to be a factor going forward. And I certainly think there's some menial tasks that I can't wait to dump on this thing. It's just, I've gotta see it. It's funny. We have to be precise. Again, it's about that like reader trust, right? We have to be precise. AI, for whatever reason, doesn't feel like it needs to be precise right now.
I know.
Right?
Yeah. It's funny. You were talking about social media. I put up a post this morning on LinkedIn. I just said, like, hey, people have been talking about this a lot. The obvious sign something has been GPT'd.
Yeah,
like
for sure.
Short, choppy sentences. And
right.
it says 3 things at a time. And I wrote the whole thing and I said, tell me if this looks familiar in your feed. I fed this exact prompt for what I'm writing to you, and it spits out this such a generic thing on the bottom of the post. I've got some funny comments on it so far.
Oh,
but
for sure.
So
it's so true. It really does rip any of the. I mean, that's the other thing too. Is like once a reporter becomes good, right? Like about the day in and day out, the who, what, when, where, why. Then they get to develop style. Right. That's part of the way that we find writers that we love, is they have style that resonates with the reader one way or another. Right. Like some of my favorite writers are not necessarily famous in any way, but people whose style appeals to me in their work. We're risking a future in which that part of it is removed from the copy. We really, if you think we're going to lose readers now, like imagine if we have styleless copy. Good Lord. Why would you do it? Why would you read this then? You know what I mean? Just have it tell you.
Yeah. I agree with all that. And that seems to be the general feelings of most people I have on the podcast, is like, keep it away from your content or your editorial side.
Yeah, man.
The stuff that excites me more is, you guys are a slightly bigger organization, but I talk to a lot of people in like independent, like smaller publishers. And just the thing I get excited about is like having them create efficiencies on their back end and everything.
Absolutely.
For just like random, like you said, digging up sources out of a stack out of town council meetings or whatever.
No question.
There's a lot of cool stuff there. But yeah, it's
for sure. I mean, that's the thing, is I want to see, our community weeklies, our small town newspapers that are just incredibly vital and necessary, right? Yeah. I want AI to be able to keep those papers afloat and make them more profitable. That's what I want to see.
Yep.
I don't want to see it be something where it's essentially just barfing out content for you all day, right? Like that's but like you were saying, digging through, if we can set up an AI bot to listen to the police siren all night, to listen to the police call all night, so in the morning a reporter can write it up. Absolutely. Right. Like that's a great efficiency. We don't need to pay a kid to be on night cops, making them miserable and question whether or not they should have gone to journalism school in the first place. Like there's advantages to that I hope in particular local newsrooms and independent newsrooms take advantage of, because I feel lucky that I have this corporate backing, but the small town in Georgia that I'm from, its little newspaper, I want that thing to survive. It's 200 years old. I want it to keep going.
Yep, exactly. We're coming right up on time. Do you have like an extra 4 or 5 minutes?
Yeah,
okay, cool. I just wanted to get one other question. So I've been kind of workshopping this one. Just flash forward 5 years. Some of this kind of came up with the AI stuff, the AI hype cycle that we're likely in. How do you see the landscape, local media landscaping at large, and then also for San Antonio Business Journal in particular, if you had to take a look at it?
Yeah, sure. I mean, my instinct is to say it's going to continue to be hard, because until we can get, I'm going to say it in as plain a language as possible. The most of the money that newspapers used to have in the 80s and 90s, when we were all flush and able to do whatever, most of that money lives at Facebook and Google now. Those are the two companies that took that advertising revenue and just ate it. I see a world, and I don't know that it's going to happen quickly. I see a world in which the backlash for those kind of platforms is much more real. Like, is much more, people are much more hesitant to use social media platforms and see them not necessarily as public squares. I mean, look, there was a time when Twitter was like a really important reporting tool. And now I encourage reporters to never look at it ever. I get it. People are like, that's crazy. It's where the public's I was like, no, it isn't. It is not where the public is talking, because quite frankly, the things that I see discussed there are not the things that my readers bring up to me. That is like, when I talk to readers face to face, none of this nonsense that I used to see on social is what people actually want to listen to, read to.
Faceless keyboard warriors, basically.
Well, and not only that, we're going to be flooded with bots and AI. I mean, we already have them out of the frame. Now imagine how sophisticated they could be when you bot an AI and just tell it to flood the zone with discussion. When I was in Tennessee, this is such a funny story. When I was in Tennessee, there was a Twitter account called 10GOP, and it was misspelled TEN_GOP. Throughout 2012, 13, particularly during the election, right, it was an absolute barrage from this account. It would DM every journalist that I knew. It was constantly blowing up feeds with talking points. Well, that Twitter account became highly influential in Tennessee. Like, I know from reporters that like that thing ringing your bell would be a thing. Well, the Mueller investigation found that it was a Russian bot.
Crazy.
And it legitimately reshaped media coverage in Tennessee for a little while. People kind of quietly pretend like that didn't happen, but sure enough, that was absolutely manipulation. We can't allow ourselves to be manipulated like that. We cannot allow ourselves to be like pushed in a direction from social. So I'm hopeful that over the next 5 years, that with AI, we'll kind of erode some more of that as we go forward. And you'll have a certain, I'm hoping that a thirst for direct connection with readers is back in fashion. I was a small business owner, right, before I was in journalism, and I never fully understood what the advantage of allowing another platform to get in between you and your reader was. Facebook basically just stands in between you and your reader and keeps content away or gives it to them based upon whether you pay them or the algorithm likes it. And why would you continue to allow a company that adds very little value?
Yeah.
They really, very little value added here, be between you and the customer. Again, we're talking customers again, right? But that's what's going to be, at least in my hope, that we have, it's like I'm telling my children, do you want to read the news? Go to the news site, right? Like, unless you're delivering a view to a website that's owned by the news organization, they're probably not making a penny off of what you just did, right? So I'm hoping that there's a more intimate's the wrong word, but a more personal connection between news organizations and their readership. It's one of the things I want to do, right? I want people to feel like they know us and that they can communicate with us, and that being, sure, I'm happy to be featured on Google News, and I want people to see us on Facebook and all that good stuff. I want it. But at the end of the day, what I really want you to do is come to this website and get through this paywall, right? That's what I really want you to do. And so 5 years from now, I think we will continue to increase the paid subscriber ratio. I'm sure we'll get some plateaus along the way, but I have a lot of faith that as people look for better quality content, as people realize that they've been fed mediocre to bad content, that they begin looking for better, and that news organizations, local, independent weeklies, nonprofits, corporate, whatever they may be, that the quality is again what brings people to the top, as opposed to the speed, as opposed to the prevalence. Those are the things that social media gives you. It's right here, right now, and it's everywhere all the time. And I'm hopeful that there's a bit of a mindset shift around quality over speed. Sure, speed's important, but quite honestly, there's an organization here in town that's very, very fast and wrong a huge percentage of the time, right? So I'm hopeful that that's where we are. For us here in San Antonio, like, I think this town in 5 years is going to be so much bigger than we think. We're already sort of bracing for the volume that we're going to have. I am concerned because we have such a close relationship with Mexico, and we have such a close, not just cultural, but business relationship. I mean, Laredo's just 2 hours, the border's just 2 hours straight down. I can get to Mexico before I can get to Houston, right? I can get to Mexico quicker than I can get to Houston. And that relationship is incredibly important for this business community. And the more we antagonize and put barriers up for that relationship, the more I am concerned about the health of our business community. Right now, we're fine, but we're also, this is a tourist hotspot for Mexican nationals who come up from North Mexico to go to Six Flags and hang out here for the weekend because they can speak Spanish around town and not have to worry.
Right.
It's a comfortable environment that they can come visit and buy the American brands that they can't get back in Monterrey. I don't want to see that end, and I worry that the next 3 years we're going to continue to antagonize that relationship, and I just don't think that's good for I don't think it's good for the country, but I certainly don't think it's good for our relationship to Mexico, which has been honestly NAFTA was signed here for a reason. You know what I mean? And so I'm a little concerned about the health of the business community, not anything that it is doing, but that it may end up at the bottom end of some really, really thoughtless business practices that I feel like is working on.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of great stuff in there, and we think about these things very similarly. So it's been nice talking to you about it.
Oh yeah, man.
I also wanted to chime in when you were talking about Facebook just standing in between you and whatever.
Yes.
I can 100% agree.
Yeah.
I just wanted to tie that to when you were talking about software companies overhyping things.
Yes.
I do believe Facebook is now called Meta because they went all in on the metaverse a few years
which is,
ago.
well, that worked out perfect, right? Like the weird Mark Zuckerberg VR thing that he put out like 3 or 4 years ago. Well, that's a great example, by the way. Like, we're going to do,
cracks me up.
Virtual reality is going to be everything all the time. Yeah. It's all virtual reality. Oh wait, nobody bought these goggles that are $2,000 that no one wants to wear. We're Meta now. Like, again, I don't think these companies actually, I don't think Meta is a good example. I don't think Meta has a real clear plan other than just trying to subsume anything. I mean, its highest growth things are the things that it bought in WhatsApp and Instagram, right? They haven't created anything new in God knows how long, right?
I use a tool in my business, an AI tool, and I love it and it works great. And then I got an email from them that said, "Oh, this product's going away December 31st because they were acquired by Meta." I'm like, you gotta be kidding me.
Perfect.
I shook my fist at Zuckerberg in the sky. I know, it was ridiculous.
Perfect. That sounds exactly like classic. I'm old enough to remember when Facebook actually was courting journalists, where they were going to newsrooms and talking about this broad audience that they would unlock for us. And that lasted like a year. And then it was like, how quickly can we cut you off and charge you to get access? Think of it like this. I just want people who are not in the media, I'm sure you have lots of folks that listen that are not media folks. I want you to imagine whatever business that you have, another business has come in and said, hey, we're going to give you twice as many customers if you just put everything on our platform, right? Great. Right. Like Walmart, right? Everything Walmart is kind of a good example. If I sell widgets and Walmart wants to sell all of my widgets, that's cool for a little while. Yeah. But then it means that Walmart is now in charge of your business, right? If you can't manage multiple lanes, suddenly Walmart is the only. So if Walmart turns to you and goes, this has to be $2 cheaper.
What are you going to do? Yep.
You got no options. You're out of luck. And so that's kind of what happened with Facebook, where for a while we were like, look at all this traffic that came flying in. And then they started going, why don't you give us $5 to unlock this post? Why don't you give us $2 to unlock this post? Why don't you? Jeez. And it's like, what value did you bring other than just, again, being a gate in between the people who clicked like next to San Antonio Business Journal because they wanted to read the San Antonio Business Journal? Yeah. Like, that's why they clicked the like, bro. That's why it got the thumbs up. Why are you the one that gets to decide what they read and what they don't?
I talked to a lady on the podcast I don't even remember who it was now, maybe like a year ago. And she's based out of the Bay Area and she's been in local journalism. And she said she remembers during the 2010s, the aughts and the 2010s, whatever you call it. She referred to it as just a giant sucking sound into the Bay Area of money from Google and Meta. And that's how, that's kind of like the metaphor that always stuck with me.
No question. And that money was pulled out of the pockets of your metro dailies for the most part. I mean, we used to joke about Craigslist killing, advertising in the back of newspapers. And it kind of did, but at least Craig Newmark gave money to newspapers.
Yeah. No, I just listened to something with him. He's
Oh, he's
He did not
great.
plan that. Yeah, yeah. No, he is great. Yeah.
He's a great dude, and he has his heart in the right place. This was not him like trying to create a business strategy that would interfere with the news gathering.
Right.
That's not at all what he was trying to do. But that does appear to be what is happening. Certainly with Meta, is that they want to be in between media and their readership. And you know, there are people in my family that get their news from Facebook, and I'm constantly having to show them that they're being given some of the lowest quality work you could possibly find. You're like, man, if you want to get something good, you're going to have to pay for it, and you're going to have to go to the source. And as long as you're letting intermediaries control your business, you're always going to be struggling because they don't care about you. They don't care about you. If they can destroy you and make 10% more, you'll be dead by sundown.
Yep. Man, it's crazy. All right, well, I do have a meeting coming up. I'd love to vent about social media for a long time. But I could keep going. This could turn into a Joe Rogan.
100%.
3.5 hours. but I'll cut. So just where can people find you online? What do you want me to link to? Anything else you want to promote or anything like that?
Well, always just come to the SanAntonioBusinessJournal.com and check out what we're doing. If you got any interest.
And subscribe.
And please subscribe. Yeah, we'll bang up against that paywall enough. I'll make you. But if you're interested in what's going on along the border in Mexico, from a business perspective, if you're interested in what tariffs are actually doing to trade, cross-border trade between Mexico and America, and how impactful that is, we have some really, really good reporting on that we're very, very proud of this year about just showing the damage that can be done with just thoughtless business practices. And there's some really good reporting I'm very proud of that we've done in that vein this year. And just check in with us anytime. Come to the San Antonio Business Journal, and look, if anyone in the sound of my voice is in town and wants to chat, drop me an email, man. Like, come on. One of the things I want is for folks to feel like we are not in a tower. Come and talk to us. Tell us what you want to read. Tell us what you want to hear. Please, stay in touch. And if you're not in San Antonio, have no interest in it, check out the Business Journal in your region, because there is one. Just about every region in America where there's one of us in there, and I'd recommend.
Perfect. Great. Awesome. Ed, thank you so much. This was fantastic. I could have kept going, like I said, but I have other stuff I got to do, I guess.
Oh, man, you got a life to lead.
Right. I have, I'm going to stop the recording.